I'm Rebecca Michaud, 34, and I never thought my pilot sister's routine flight would destroy my marriage. For 5 years, James and I seemed perfect together. Our Boston life was everything I'd dreamed of until my sister Mackenzie's voice cracked over the phone. Becca, I just saw James in business class to Paris with another woman. The woman he held wasn't me. The city wasn't Chicago where he claimed to be. Was my entire marriage built on lies? Before I continue, please subscribe to my channel and let me know where you're watching from. The betrayal I'm about to share changed everything I thought I knew about love and trust. Boston had always been home. My corner office overlooking the harbor at Callahan Marketing reflected the success I'd worked hard to achieve as a senior marketing executive. Our brownstone in Beacon Hill, with its exposed brick walls and rooftop garden, was the envy of our friends. I'd built a life that looked perfect on paper and felt nearly perfect in reality, at least that's what I believe. I met James Anderson 7 years ago at a charity gala for Boston Children's Hospital. I was coordinating the event's marketing campaign, running on pure caffeine and determination when a tall man with intelligent eyes and a disarming smile handed me a much-needed glass of water. "You look like you could use this more than champagne," he said. James was different from the finance guys I'd dated before. Despite his prestigious position as an investment banker at Atlantic Financial Partners, he seemed genuinely interested in my work rather than just talking about his own achievements. He asked thoughtful questions about my marketing strategies and remembered details about campaigns I mentioned weeks later. Our courtship was a whirlwind of gallery openings, hidden restaurant gems, and weekend hiking trips through New England. James understood my drive because he shared it. When I needed to work late, he'd bring dinner to my office. When he had important clients in town, I'd help him select the perfect wine for their tastes. We complemented each other perfectly, a partnership of equals. My sister Mackenzie and I couldn't be more different, yet remained incredibly close. While I chose the corporate ladder, Mackenzie pursued her childhood dream of flying. At 31, she'd become one of the youngest commercial pilots for American Airways, commanding transatlantic flights with the same confidence she'd shown since childhood. "The Earth makes more sense from above," she always said. "Problems look smaller from 35,000 feet. Mackenzie was the free spirit, the risk-taker. I was the planner, the strategist. But beneath our different exteriors, we shared an unbreakable bond forged through losing our parents in our early 20s. We became each other's safety net, the one constant in a changing world. Trust didn't come easily to me. My college boyfriend's betrayal had left deep scars. Finding texts from multiple women on his phone while we were planning our future together had shattered my belief in love. For years afterward, I kept relationships superficial, protecting my heart behind carefully constructed walls. James changed that. He was patient, transparent, open with his phone and his feelings. When anxiety crept in, he'd hold my hands and say, "Ask me anything, Rebecca. I have nothing to hide from you." Gradually, the walls came down. Our wedding at the Boston Public Library was everything I'd dreamed of, intimate yet elegant, surrounded by books and history and the 100 people who mattered most. James teared up during his vows, promising to choose me every day, to build a life of honesty and adventure together. I believed every word. The first years of marriage were blissful despite our demanding careers. We established rituals: Sunday morning coffee on our rooftop, monthly technology-free weekends in Vermont, surprising each other with small gifts that showed we were paying attention. James's business trips became more frequent as he rose through the ranks, but technology kept us connected. He'd video call from hotel rooms, show me city views, bring me small treasures from Chicago, London, Singapore. "Travel is part of the job," he'd remind me, "but you're my home." When did things begin to change? So gradually I barely noticed at first. About 8 months ago, the video calls became shorter, sometimes audio only. The thoughtful souvenirs stopped. James became protective of his phone, positioning it face down, taking calls in another room. He started working later, claimed more overnight trips were necessary. "Atlantic Financial is expanding into European markets," he explained when I questioned the increased travel. "It's temporary, but crucial for my position." I noticed the changes but dismissed my concerns. James was under pressure. The economy was uncertain. His division was restructuring. I told myself not to become the suspicious, needy wife when my husband was working hard for our future. I focused on my own upcoming promotion, planning to surprise him with a celebration weekend once his travel schedule eased. How easily we explain away the warning signs when truth is too painful to consider. How willingly we silence our intuition when it whispers uncomfortable questions. I was about to learn that ignoring those whispers comes at a devastating price. The call came on a Wednesday afternoon. I was presenting a campaign to potential clients when my phone vibrated repeatedly. Mackenzie calling 3 times in succession, our signal for urgency. I excused myself, stepping into the hallway with concern tightening my chest. Kenzie, what's wrong? Are you okay? The pause before she spoke told me everything and nothing. I'm fine, Becca. Just landed in Boston from Paris. Another pause. I need to tell you something, and I don't know how. My sister, always direct, never hesitated like this. My grip tightened around the phone. Whatever it is, just say it. I saw James on my flight. From Paris to Boston. Business class. Her words came faster now. He was with a woman, blonde, elegant, probably mid-30s. They were intimate. Holding hands across the seats. He kissed her forehead when she fell asleep. The hallway tilted slightly. I stayed myself against the wall. That's impossible, I heard myself say. James is in Chicago until tomorrow. Has been since Monday. You must have seen someone who looks like him. Becca. Mackenzie's voice was gentle but firm. It was James. Row 4, seats A and B. I served their section during meal service. He didn't see me. I switched with another flight attendant after I spotted him. I know what I saw. There must be some explanation, I insisted, even as ice spread through my veins. A colleague, a client. The way he looked at her wasn't professional, Mackenzie interrupted. I've been flying long enough to recognize the difference between business associates and something else. I took a photo from behind when I walked past. I didn't want to, but I knew you'd need proof. My phone pinged with an incoming message. There was James, his profile unmistakable, leaning close to a woman I'd never seen, his hand covering hers on the armrest between them. Flight AF 337 from Paris, Mackenzie continued quietly. Landed at Logan 20 minutes ago. I can forward the passenger manifest if you need it. The conference room door opened. My clients were leaving, looking for me to continue our discussion. I plastered on a professional smile, promised to call Mackenzie back, and somehow finished the meeting on autopilot while my personal life imploded silently in the background. Back in my office, I locked the door and began searching for evidence. James had texted that morning. Early meetings all day, client dinner tonight. Miss you. His location sharing showed him in downtown Chicago. With shaking hands, I accessed our shared credit card account. There they were charges my busy schedule had prevented me from noticing. Le Bristol Paris Hotel for 3 nights, €620 per night. An €840 dinner at L'Ambrosie. Chanel boutique purchase, €2,200. None of these extravagances had ever been mentioned. The final confirmation came from our shared iPad, the one James had forgotten to unlink from his messaging. Texts to a contact listed only as K revealed everything. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, sent last Sunday. These Chicago cover stories are becoming too complicated, sent a month earlier. Missing your smile, you're sent, counting the days, sent with alarming frequency over what appeared to be at least a year. I sat frozen as fragmented memories rearranged themselves into a new, horrifying picture. James's sudden interest in French culture. Books about Paris architecture appearing on our shelves. The French cologne replacing his usual scent. Business calls where he casually used French phrases I hadn't realized he knew. The evidence was overwhelming, yet part of me still searched for innocent explanations. Perhaps a surprise anniversary trip he was planning. An important client he couldn't disclose. The desperate theories collapsed under the weight of those intimate texts. The passenger manifest Mackenzie forwarded showing Anderson, James, and Winters, Catherine, seated together, the hotel room clearly booked for 2. As shock gave way to pain, one question burned through everything else. How long had I been living inside a lie? Knowledge without understanding is its own form of torture. I now knew the devastating what of my situation, but the how, when, and why remained elusive shadows. I needed the complete picture before confronting James, both to protect myself legally and to avoid being manipulated by half-truths when emotions ran high. I called my assistant and canceled my meetings for the rest of the week, citing a family emergency. In a sense, it was true my family was in critical condition, though no one but Mackenzie knew it yet. First, I meticulously examined our finances. Beyond the credit card statements, I gained access to James's expense reports at Atlantic Financial. The pattern was unmistakable. Quarterly investment conferences in Paris dating back 18 months, each lasting 4-5 days. In company records, these trips were documented with vague meeting notes and generic hotel conference photos easily found online. James's work calendar, which synchronized to our home system, showed blocks labeled Chicago Market Expansion, precisely during these Paris excursions. I cross-referenced flight records through my own corporate travel account. There were no flights to Chicago on those dates, but there were first-class reservations to Paris Charles de Gaulle. The deception was sophisticated and premeditated, designed specifically to exploit my trust and busy schedule. I took a calculated risk and called James's executive assistant, Angela, with whom I'd developed a friendly relationship over years of holiday parties and office events. "Angela, I'm trying to surprise James with something special for our anniversary," I lied smoothly. "Do you know if he has any particular clients in Paris he's close with? I thought incorporating something from his work travels might be meaningful." Angela's momentary hesitation told me everything. "Paris," she echoed. "I'm not aware of any Paris clients. European accounts are handled through our London office. James primarily focuses on domestic investments and our Asian expansion." I controlled my reaction, thanking her casually before ending the call. Another piece of the puzzle slid into place. James's trips weren't sanctioned company business. He was using the firm's infrastructure to facilitate his affair while potentially compromising his professional ethics. In our bedroom closet, behind James's collection of custom suits, I discovered a small locked case I'd never noticed before. My hands trembled as I searched for a key, eventually finding it taped beneath his dresser drawer, an old hiding trick he'd mentioned his father used for important documents. Inside lay evidence of a secret life. Receipts for jewelry from Cartier I'd never received, handwritten notes on hotel stationery in elegant feminine handwriting, a small velvet pouch containing a woman's diamond earring. One photograph showed James and a striking blonde woman standing before the Eiffel Tower, his arm wrapped possessively around her waist. They looked blissfully happy. The timestamp showed it was taken last Christmas when James had supposedly been stranded in Chicago due to a blizzard. The woman was beautiful in a sophisticated European way. Designer clothes, elegant posture, knowing smile. This was no random fling. The devotion in James's expression as he gazed at her mirrored how he once looked at me. Mackenzie arrived that evening, having rearranged her flight schedule to support me. Together, we conducted a digital investigation into the mystery woman. "Catherine Winters," Mackenzie said, pointing to a professional website we discovered. French-American art dealer specializing in contemporary European artists. Gallery owner in the Marais district of Paris with a Sallet location in Boston. I finished, staring at the screen. "She has a gallery in Boston's South End." The pieces align with terrible clarity. The art books appearing in our home, James's sudden interest in attending gallery openings, his unexplained knowledge of artists I'd never mentioned to him. Catherine's professional biography revealed more connections. Graduate of James's alma mater Columbia, former investment banker who'd pivoted to the art world, moved to Paris 6 years ago but maintained American business ties. They likely ran in the same professional circles before ever meeting. Her Instagram profile, public due to her professional status, showed carefully curated images of gallery openings, art installations, and European travel. James never appeared in these photos, but certain locations matched his business trip destinations exactly. Their affair had been conducted across continents with calculated precision. The most painful revelation came when I correlated the timeline. Their affair began approximately 18 months ago, exactly when I had suffered a miscarriage that sent me into a depression. While I was grieving our lost pregnancy, James was initiating a relationship with another woman. "I need to confront him with everything," I told Mackenzie, my grief hardening into resolve. No partial evidence, no opportunity for him to minimize or explain away isolated incidents. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" she asked, concern. "I need to see his face when he realizes there's no way out," I replied. "I need to hear the truth directly from him." I gathered all the evidence, financial records, photographs, text messages, flight manifests, and prepared for the hardest conversation of my life. James would return from Chicago tomorrow, walking through our door with rehearsed stories and practiced kisses. For the last time, I would pretend to believe him. James arrived home Thursday evening carrying a small gift bag with a Chicago logo, a calculated prop for his fabricated business trip. I greeted him in the living room, my emotional armor secured tightly around my heart. "Welcome home," I said, accepting his kiss with practiced normalcy. "How was Chicago?" He launched into a detailed account of non-existent meetings, fictional client dinners, and imaginary hotel complications. I watched him perform, noting the practiced ease of his lies, wondering how I could have missed the subtle tells, now glaring to me the slight aversion of his eyes when mentioning specific details, the over-elaboration of insignificant points to distract from the central deception. The Windsor Group is finally ready to sign, he concluded, loosening his tie and pouring himself a scotch. After 6 months of negotiations, we've got them. Phillips is ecstatic. I nodded, allowing the moment to settle before responding. That's quite an achievement, I said carefully, especially considering you weren't in Chicago this week. The brief freeze in his movements was almost imperceptible. His recovery was smooth, practiced. What? Of course I was in Chicago. Where else would I be? He laughed, but his eyes darted briefly to his suitcase, no doubt mentally reviewing what evidence it might contain. Paris, I stated flatly. Business class on Air France. You sat in row 4, seats A and B, you ordered the beef bourguignon for dinner and the chocolate mousse for dessert. The color drained from his face, but he attempted recovery. Rebecca, I don't know what you're talking about. Did someone tell you? My sister saw you, James. Mackenzie was working that flight. She served your section. I opened the folder beside me, methodically arranging its contents across our coffee table. Flight manifests, hotel receipts, credit card statements, photographs. Each piece of evidence I placed before him eliminated another possible escape route, another potential lie. Catherine Winters, I continued, my voice surprisingly steady. French-American art dealer, Columbia graduate, like you. You've been seeing her for at least 18 months. You stayed at Le Bristol Paris this week, room 512. You bought her something from Chanel worth over 2,000 euros. James stared at the evidence, his deception exposed in high-resolution color and irrefutable documentation. His shoulders slumped as his fictional narrative collapsed. It's not what you think, he began weakly. Really? Because I think you've been leading a double life. I think you've been systematically lying to me, to your company, possibly committing expense fraud to finance your affair. I think you've made me question my sanity when I sensed something was wrong. What part am I misunderstanding? James ran his hands through his hair, the practiced charm evaporating to reveal a cornered man. We didn't plan this, he said finally. It just happened. Catherine and I met at a gallery event when I was in Paris for legitimate business. We connected intellectually in a way that I haven't experienced in a long time. Each word was a fresh cut. How long, James? 18 months, he admitted, confirming my timeline. After we ran into each other a second time, it felt like fate. She understands the pressures I face, the ambitions I have. She moves in the financial and art worlds seamlessly. We share a vision for the future that aligns. And when exactly did this fated connection begin? I asked, though I already knew the answer. His hesitation told me he recognized the trap. I don't see how the exact timing. It was during my miscarriage recovery, wasn't it? My voice finally cracked. While I was grieving our baby, you were starting an affair. His eyes dropped, unable to meet mine. You were so distant then, Rebecca, so consumed by the loss. I needed someone who could see me, not just the failed father I'd become. The selfishness of his justification stunned me into momentary silence. I was grieving our child, I finally whispered, a child you claimed to want as much as I did. James looked up, and for the first time, I saw the truth in his eyes, cold, unfiltered, and cruel. I never wanted children, Rebecca. I agreed because it seemed important to you, but when you lost the pregnancy, I felt relieved. Catherine doesn't want children either. Her career is her priority, as mine is to me. The revelation knocked the air from my lungs. This stranger before me had watched me sob over our lost baby while secretly celebrating the miscarriage. He had held me through fertility treatments while hoping they would fail. So everything was a lie, I said quietly. Our entire marriage was built on performances and fabrications. Not everything, he insisted, suddenly earnest. I did love you, Rebecca, part of me still does, but people grow apart. They evolve. Catherine and I share a connection that transcends conventional relationships. We're intellectual equals, ambitious in compatible ways. And what was I? Just the convenient Boston wife. The respectable facade for your company profile. You're twisting this, he protested, finding his footing in defensive anger. We had good years together. I didn't plan to hurt you. No, you just planned elaborate deceptions to avoid getting caught, I countered. You created fake business trips, submitted fraudulent expense reports, maintained an entire secret life while sleeping beside me every night. That requires substantial premeditation, James. His expression hardened. What exactly do you want from this conversation, Rebecca? Clearly, you've made up your mind about me. I want the truth, all of it. After 5 years of marriage, I deserve at least that much. Fine. Yes, Catherine and I are in love. Yes, I've been flying to Paris regularly to be with her. Yes, I've maintained an apartment near her gallery for the past year. And yes, I was going to ask for a divorce after securing my partnership at Atlantic next month. Each admission was another foundation stone crumbling beneath the architecture of my life. Were there others before her? I asked, needing to understand the full scope of his betrayal. His uncomfortable shift answered before his words did. There were occasional indiscretions. Business trips, professional conferences, nothing serious until Catherine. The room spun slightly as I absorbed the extent of his infidelity. Not just one elaborate affair, but a pattern of deception throughout our marriage. I want you out of this house tonight, I said, surprising myself with the calm authority in my voice. Pack what you need for now. Your lawyer can arrange for the rest later. This is my house too, he objected. You can't just. I've already spoken with my attorney, I interrupted, bluffing with confidence I didn't yet have. Given the evidence of financial impropriety and the potential impact on your company's reputation, he suggested you might prefer a discreet separation process. The threat of professional exposure hit its mark. James's career depended on his trustworthy image. An investment banker caught falsifying company records for personal indiscretions would face serious consequences. You wouldn't dare expose this, he warned. It would destroy both our reputations. I have nothing to lose anymore, I replied simply. You've already taken everything that mattered. In that moment, seeing the calculation in his eyes as he weighed his options, I recognized the man before me had always been a stranger. The James I loved had been my own creation, a projection of trust and hope onto a canvas that held no such image. I'll go to the Four Seasons tonight, he finally conceded. But this conversation isn't over, Rebecca. There are financial considerations, property divisions. We'll handle everything through attorneys, I interrupted. Tonight is the last time we'll speak directly until absolutely necessary. As James packed a suitcase, the same one he'd just unpacked from Paris, the magnitude of what was happening finally penetrated my protective shock. My marriage was over, by future, erased. The life I'd built with such care had been an elaborate stage set with false walls and painted backdrop. When the front door closed behind him, I finally allowed myself to collapse, sobs tearing through my body as Mackenzie emerged from the guest room where she'd been waiting. She held me as the full force of betrayal washed over me, my heart breaking not just for what I'd lost, but for what had never actually existed. The days following James's departure blurred together in a haze of grief and disbelief. I moved through our home like a ghost, touching photographs, books, furniture, questioning which memories were real and which had been performances for my benefit. Sleep became an elusive luxury. Each night, I replayed conversations and moments from our marriage, searching for clues I'd missed, warning signs I'd dismissed. Our wedding vows echoed with cruel irony, his promises of honesty and fidelity now revealed as calculated fiction. Mackenzie stayed for the first week, but eventually had to return to her flight schedule. I can take extended leave, she offered, concern etched across her face. You can't put your life on hold for my broken one, I insisted. I need to learn to navigate this new reality myself. Alone in my brownstone, I oscillated between numbness and unbearable pain. Some mornings, I couldn't summon the energy to leave bed. Other days, manic energy drove me to purge the house of James's presence, boxing expensive suits, tearing photographs from frames, throwing the French wines he'd cultivated a taste for against the kitchen wall in satisfying explosions of glass and Cabernet. My body manifested the trauma physically. 10 pounds disappeared from my already slim frame. Dark circles became permanent fissures beneath my eyes. My normally disciplined approach to health dissolved as sleep eluded me and appetite vanished. Even basic self-care felt monumentally difficult. Work, my usual sanctuary, became impossible. After 2 weeks of compassionate leave, I attempted to return, only to find myself staring blankly at presentations, unable to focus on client needs when my personal life had imploded so spectacularly. My boss, sensing my struggle, suggested a more extended leave. Your position will be waiting, she assured me, but healing can't be rushed. The professional withdrawal added another dimension to my loss. Without work to anchor me, my days stretched emptily before me, leaving too much space for painful rumination. Friends reached out with growing concern. but I found myself avoiding their calls. How could I explain that the marriage they'd witnessed, the relationship they'd celebrated and admired, had been built on elaborately constructed lies? The humiliation of such public deception compounded my private pain. When I finally ventured out for necessities, I found myself scanning faces in crowds, suddenly paranoid about who else might have known about James's double life. Had colleagues whispered behind my back? Had acquaintances exchanged knowing glances when I mentioned James's business trips? The seeds of distrust James had planted now flowered into full-blown paranoia. Just as I reached my lowest point, James escalated the situation. His initial conciliatory tone vanished once he secured temporary housing and consulted with his attorney. His text messages turned threatening, then manipulative. "I hope you realize how this situation developed because of your emotional unavailability. My attorney advises that your actions constitute harassment and invasion of privacy. If you make this public, I'll be forced to share details about your psychological instability after the miscarriage." Each message revealed more of his true character, the calculating manipulator beneath the charming facade. When gaslighting failed to elicit the submissive response he expected, he attempted a different approach, offering a settlement that would leave me with barely enough to restart my life. "In the interest of an amicable separation, I'm prepared to offer you a one-time payment of $50,000 and 6 months of housing allowance. My lawyer will draw up papers requiring mutual non-disclosure." The insulting offer after years of partnership and his confidence that I would accept such terms ignited something beyond pain. For the first time since the confrontation, I felt a flicker of anger breaking through the grief. This anger intensified when I discovered James had begun controlling the narrative among our social circle. Friends called with awkward concerns about my difficult emotional state and James's regrettable but understandable actions given the circumstances. He had portrayed himself as the long-suffering husband who'd finally sought happiness after years of supporting an emotionally unavailable wife. The ultimate betrayal came when I learned James had accessed our joint investment accounts, liquidating significant assets for safekeeping during this unstable period. My financial security, carefully built through years of disciplined saving, was being systematically dismantled by the man who had already destroyed my emotional foundation. When I confronted him via text about the financial impropriety, his response was chilling. "If you choose to make things difficult, I'll ensure this process becomes extremely unpleasant. Atlantic Financial has considerable resources for legal matters. Do you really want to fight an institution of that magnitude? Be reasonable, Rebecca." I sat on our rooftop garden, the space where we'd once shared Sunday coffees and intimate conversations, and confronted the devastating reality of my situation. My marriage was revealed as fiction. My financial security was under attack. My professional identity had been temporarily abandoned. My emotional well-being lay in tatters. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly powerless. The controlled, capable marketing executive had vanished, replaced by a hollow-eyed woman who jumped at the sound of incoming text messages and could barely summon the energy to shower. That night, staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., I reached the bottom of my descent. Tomorrow, I would either begin to climb out of this abyss or surrender to it completely. The decision, I realized with terrifying clarity, was entirely mine to make. "Enough," Mackenzie's voice crackled through my phone speaker with characteristic directness. "I've arranged personal leave. I'm flying in tomorrow, and we're taking back control of this situation." My sister's determined tone pierced through the fog that had enveloped me for weeks. Despite my protests, she arrived the next morning with unwavering resolve and a plan already in motion. "You need 3 things immediately," she announced, pulling open my bedroom curtains to let in the first sunlight I'd seen in days. "Legal protection, financial security, and basic human necessities, which apparently include a shower and actual food." Mackenzie's presence was both salvation and intervention. She stocked my empty refrigerator, scheduled an appointment with her own therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma, and most critically, arranged a meeting with Allison Reeves, the divorce attorney known for handling high-profile cases with both discretion and fierce advocacy. "She doesn't just win settlements," Mackenzie explained as we drove to the downtown office. "She ensures her clients emerge with dignity and security intact." Allison Reeves was nothing like I expected. Rather than the aggressive shark I'd imagined, she projected calm confidence and empathetic professionalism. Her office walls displayed degrees from Harvard Law and framed newspaper clippings of landmark cases she'd won, particularly for spouses of high-level executive. Financial infidelity often accompanies emotional infidelity, she explained after reviewing my situation. The good news is that Massachusetts law provides significant protections, especially given the duration of your marriage and the documented deception. For the first time, I learned about legal safeguards I'd never considered: automatic temporary restraining orders preventing asset liquidation once divorce proceedings began, forensic accounting to trace hidden funds, court orders to access financial records James had attempted to obscure. His threatening texts and emails are actually helpful evidence, Allison noted, examining my phone. They demonstrate coercive intent and bad faith negotiation. As for his company's considerable resources, Atlantic Financial would likely distance themselves quickly from an executive misusing corporate resources to conduct personal affairs. The expertise and strategic thinking Allison offered became my first foothold on the climb upward. With her guidance, we filed emergency motions to freeze remaining joint assets and secured temporary support orders based on our marital standard of living. As legal protections fell into place, I made a startling discovery while organizing financial documents. Hidden among tax returns was a USB drive containing James's personal files, likely forgotten during his hurried departure. The drive revealed evidence of more than just romantic infidelity. James had been recording questionable transactions through shell companies, routing client investments through entities that seemed designed to obscure their ultimate destination. While I didn't understand all the financial intricacies, the pattern suggested potential ethical violations, at minimum possibly even regulatory infraction. After consulting with Allison, I requested a confidential meeting with Elliot Blackwood, James's direct supervisor and Atlantic Financial's chief investment officer. The meeting was a calculated risk, but one that shifted the power dynamic dramatically. These records suggest concerning patterns, I explained carefully, presenting selected documents without specific accusations. Given the circumstances of my separation from James, I felt ethically obligated to bring these to appropriate attention before determining next steps. Elliot's expression remained professional, but I recognized the gravity with which he viewed the materials. Atlantic Financial's reputation depended on impeccable client trust. "We take such matters extremely seriously," he assured me. "The firm will conduct a thorough internal investigation immediately." Within days, James was placed on administrative leave pending investigation. His company email was disabled, his access to client accounts suspended. The powerful institution he'd used to threaten me was now scrutinizing his own actions instead. As legal and professional consequences unfolded, I began addressing the social narrative James had constructed. Rather than engaging in counter-accusations, I met with close friends individually, sharing selected facts while maintaining dignity. "I'm not looking to create sides in this situation," I told each person. "I simply want to ensure that decisions are made with accurate information rather than calculated narrative." Several friends admitted James had approached them with practiced stories about our marriage's decline, portraying himself as the victim of my career obsession and emotional distance. The transparent manipulation backfired as these friends recognized the disconnect between his claims and the Rebecca they'd known for years. Mackenzie connected me with a support group for spouses who had experienced similar betrayals. These weekly meetings became crucial to my recovery, offering both practical strategies and emotional validation from people who truly understood the unique pain of discovering a double life. "The disorientation you're feeling is normal," explained Grace, a corporate lawyer whose husband had maintained two separate families for over a decade. "You're not just grieving a marriage, you're questioning your entire reality, including your ability to trust your own perception." Through these connections, I began reconstructing my sense of self separate from the marriage that had defined me. I rediscovered passions I'd gradually abandoned during my relationship with James: photography, distance running, classical literature, finding healing in activities that connected me to my pre-James identity. 3 months after the initial discovery, I returned to work with newfound focus and perspective. My boss welcomed me back with a project perfect for my re-entry: rebranding a women's financial literacy organization. The irony wasn't lost on me as I applied my professional expertise to empowering women's financial independence while reclaiming my own. "You're handling this with remarkable grace," my colleague Sarah commented during a strategy session. "Not always," I admitted, "but I'm learning that surviving betrayal doesn't mean never falling apart. It means continuing to gather the pieces even on your worst days." The legal process continued its methodical progression. James, facing professional scrutiny and mounting evidence of financial impropriety, began retreating from his aggressive stance. His settlement offers gradually improved as Allison systematically dismantled his attempts to hide assets or minimize his obligations. 6 months after that devastating phone call from Mackenzie, I stood in my newly purchased condo overlooking Boston Harbor, smaller than the brownstone but entirely mine. The space reflected my emerging identity: clean lines, bright spaces, walls adorned with local photography and meaningful mementos rather than the status symbols James had insisted upon. As I unpacked books into built-in shelves, I came across a journal from the darkest period of my breakdown. Reading my desperate entries from those early weeks, I barely recognized the shattered woman who had questioned her worth, her judgment, her very sanity. The journey from that broken place to my current stability hadn't followed a straight upward trajectory. There had been setbacks, days when grief ambushed me in grocery store aisles or during client meetings. But the overall direction was undeniable. I was climbing steadily toward a future I was now creating entirely on my own terms. That evening, sitting on my new balcony with Mackenzie, I realized the subtle but profound shift that had occurred. For the first time since the discovery, I had passed an entire day without thinking about James. His power over my emotional state was finally beginning to fade. "I couldn't have done this without you," I told my sister as we watched the harbor lights shimmer against the darkening sky. "Yes, you could have," she replied confidently. "You would have found your way eventually. I just helped speed up the process." Looking out at the vast horizon, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before the betrayal: genuine hope for what lay ahead, and the growing certainty that I possessed everything I needed to face it. 1 year after my world collapsed, I signed the final divorce agreement in Allison's office. The terms reflected not just financial equity but a profound personal victory. James, facing continued investigation at Atlantic Financial and diminishing professional prospects, had abandoned his attempts at financial manipulation. "This settlement is exceptionally favorable," Allison noted as I reviewed the final numbers. "Full division of marital assets, substantial support given the duration of marriage, and complete separation of future earnings and retirement accounts." What remained unsaid but understood between us was the leverage that had secured such terms. James's improper use of company resources, questionable investment practices, and the potential public relations disaster of his double life had ultimately left him with limited negotiation power. "Is it wrong that I don't feel the vindication I expected?" I asked Allison as she filed the executed documents. "Not at all," she replied thoughtfully. "Vindication is overrated compared to liberation. You're not celebrating his downfall, you're embracing your freedom." That distinction resonated deeply as I stepped out of the legal offices for the last time. The divorce wasn't a victory over James, it was a reclamation of my autonomy, my future, my very identity. My professional reemergence paralleled my personal revival. 3 months after returning to work, I was offered the creative director position I'd been working toward for years. The promotion came with not just increased responsibility and compensation, but the opportunity to build my own team and shape the agency's creative direction. "Your recent work shows remarkable depth and authenticity," my CEO explained during the offer. "Sometimes life's hardest experiences translate into our most compelling professional insights." He was right. My marketing approaches had evolved, focusing less on aspirational perfection and more on authentic connection. Clients responded enthusiastically to campaigns that acknowledged life's complexities rather than presenting airbrushed ideals. My personal experience with shattered illusions had paradoxically enhanced my professional authenticity. My new apartment overlooking Boston Harbor became a sanctuary of peace and self-discovery. Unlike the brownstone decorated to project success and sophistication, this space truly reflected who I was becoming. Comfortable reading nooks replaced formal sitting areas. Local artists' work adorned walls previously reserved for expensive but emotionally empty statement pieces. The kitchen, once a showpiece rarely used, became the heart of the home, where I rediscovered my love for cooking. As my life stabilized, I learned the aftermath of James's choices through mutual connections rather than direct contact. The professional investigation had indeed revealed improprieties sufficient for Atlantic Financial to terminate his employment. His partnership tracked the achievement he'd prioritized above all else had evaporated. More telling was the dissolution of his relationship with Catherine. According to shared acquaintances, she had ended things shortly after James's professional downfall and financial constraints became apparent. The intellectual equals and compatible ambitions he had extolled proved conditional on his continued success and status. "She's opened a new gallery in Madrid," a friend in the art world mentioned casually over coffee. Apparently Boston and Paris no longer aligned with her expanding vision. The news provoked not satisfaction, but a complex mixture of emotions, a distant sadness for the man I once loved, now experiencing his own form of betrayal, alongside gratitude that his deception had been revealed before I'd invested more years in our counterfeit marriage. My relationship with Mackenzie, always close, developed new dimensions through sheer adversity. Her unflinching support during my darkest period created a bond beyond typical sisterhood. We established new traditions, quarterly weekend adventures to locations neither of us had explored, celebrating milestones both large and small, regular video calls that remained sacrosanct regardless of busy schedule. "You'd have done the same for me," she insisted when I tried to express my gratitude during a weekend in Vermont. "I would have tried," I acknowledge. "But not everyone has your instinct for knowing exactly what someone needs before they know it themselves." In a move that once would have seemed unthinkable, I planned a solo trip to Paris, deliberately reclaiming the city that had symbolized my husband's betrayal. Walking the streets that had hosted his secret life, I experienced a profound emotional liberation. Paris was too magnificent to remain forever tainted by James's deception. I stayed in a small boutique hotel in the Marais, ironically near Catherine's former gallery, and spent days exploring neighborhoods, museums, and cafes on my own schedule. I even booked a business-class seat for the return flight, experiencing the luxury James had shared with his mistress while I worked overtime in Boston. Dating again came gradually, without pressure or particular expectations. The support group had cautioned against rushing into new relationships before processing the trauma of betrayal, advice I took seriously. When I eventually began accepting dinner invitations, I approached each interaction with new awareness, attentive to both red flags and my own patterns. "I'm not looking for promises of forever," I explained to Michael, a landscape architect I'd been seeing casually for several months. "I'm interested in authentic connection in the present." "That's refreshingly honest," he replied. "Most people claim to want truth while hiding behind comforting fiction." His observation crystallized an important lesson from my journey. Authentic happiness required embracing reality, both its limitations and possibilities, rather than clinging to comforting illusions. The painful awakening from my marriage had ultimately delivered me to a more genuine way of experiencing life. 18 months after signing the divorce papers, I received an unexpected email from James. After the requisite pleasantries and awkward acknowledgments, he proposed meeting for closure. "There are things I need to say in person," he wrote. "Explanations you deserve to hear." After careful consideration and consultation with my therapist, I agreed to a brief meeting in a public cafe. James appeared older, the confident demeanor replaced by something more subdued. After ordering coffee, he launched into what sounded like a practiced speech about regret and personal growth. "I've had a lot of time to reflect on my choices," he explained, maintaining careful eye contact. "The person I was then, the decisions I made, I barely recognize that man now." As he continued his narrative of transformation and insight, I observed him with curious detachment. The man whose approval and affection had once been central to my identity now seemed like a character from a film I'd seen long ago, recognizable but without emotional impact. "James," I finally interrupted gently, "I appreciate you sharing this perspective. But I need to be clear, I didn't agree to meet for reconciliation or even absolution. Those aren't mine to give, and they wouldn't serve either of us now." His expression registered surprise, then disappointment. "Then why did you come?" The question was sincere and deserved an honest answer. "To confirm what I suspected," I replied, "that I've truly moved forward. Seeing you today doesn't trigger pain or anger anymore, just appreciation for the journey that brought me to where I am now." In an unexpected way, the collapse of our marriage ultimately led me to a more authentic life. The truth seemed to land harder than any accusation could have. James had anticipated anger, tears, perhaps even lingering attachments, emotional responses that would center him in my narrative. My genuine peace and independence left no space for him to occupy. We parted amicably but definitively, both recognizing that our chapters together had conclusively ended. Walking away from that cafe, I felt the final weight of our shared past lift completely. 2 years after that devastating phone call from Mackenzie, my life bore little resemblance to what I had once envisioned. Instead of the carefully curated existence I'd constructed with James, I lived with greater spontaneity, deeper connections, and more authentic pursuits. Professional success now balanced harmoniously with personal fulfillment rather than serving as its substitute. The betrayal that had once defined me had transformed into a chapter in a much larger story, painful but ultimately formative. The marriage I thought would last forever had ended, but the self-discovery it catalyzed continued to unfold in unexpected and rewarding ways. The truest measure of healing, my therapist had observed in our final regular session, isn't forgetting the pain but integrating it into a larger narrative where it no longer controls the plot. Standing on my harbor view balcony that evening, I recognized the wisdom in her words. The story of my life was still being written, with chapters ahead I couldn't yet imagine. The betrayal had forever changed me, but the transformation had yielded something more valuable than the illusion. It replaced an authentic self, standing firmly in her own truth, ready to embrace whatever came next. If you've stayed with me through this journey, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support means more than you know. Have you ever experienced betrayal that ultimately led to unexpected growth? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Please like this video if my story resonated with you, subscribe for more authentic conversations, and share with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest betrayals. Remember, sometimes losing what we thought we wanted opens the door to discovering what we truly need.